Wait, you're still here, David, right?
Yep.
Alright, sick. Cool, let's check this out. Just for as far as like reels go, 1 minute 30 is like the perfect average length, I feel. Because apparently
Yeah.
1:30 is the average time it takes for someone to lose interest. So
Okay.
apparently 1:30 is the best way to go. So let's check out your modeling reel. Yeah, pretty cool stuff, man. So, I mean, things are definitely going to change as far as like things go by the end of school, right? But this integration and stuff feels really weird.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
would
wouldn't
just
include
not
this.
have that.
Yeah, I would simply not even bother including this.
Because then first watching this, I was like, this doesn't look that great. And then when you show the turntable of the helicopter,
It's like, oh, it's kind of good.
it's like a different level of quality, really. So
Yeah.
it's like one of those situations where if you do everything, you can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
But it seems like modeling, texturing, that's more your thing. So instead of integrating and compositing here.
So it says he only did modeling and texturing, so I'm sure every like lighting and all that stuff is done by other people. In that case, cut it. Like I wouldn't even bother including this. And the worst, like I said, this is the worst part about this, right? As soon as I saw this, I was like, okay, this person's not that experienced.
Exactly.
But then when I saw your car, I was like, okay, this guy can actually model. So like you should start with this. Like this is what I think you should start with, the car. I think the car is pretty decent. Alright, so as far as like your general modeling goes, it's pretty clean, it's pretty decent. I personally think things should be a subdivision up. Like I feel you don't like this is too low poly, I feel like you don't want your shapes to change too much between subdivided and poly. So I think that's the main thing I would add with your modeling. Like the general way of terminating edge flows, all that sort of stuff is pretty cool. Your general topology flow is decent, it's fine. Like having everything consistent this way and this way is nice, it's good. I just kind of feel when it comes to curved surfaces, I feel you need more resolution this way. You don't, when you smooth an object, you don't want the line to change that much. Where I feel this is way too simple. So all you'd have to do is you would just build with one subdivision level up pretty much. So just keep in mind of having more edge loops. So what you can do is you can always just block out the shape, crease the edges, and then smooth it once, and then you'll have a nice curve. So I think that's the general rule across all of your modeling. Because the modeling itself is quite clean. I think it's just a bit too simple for me, personally. This is just the way I feel. I think it's just way too low poly. I mean, sorry, I was saying technically you could just smooth it once and you would have a pretty decent car. Sorry, what are you saying, David?
No, I was just looking at the helicopter as well, and in terms of modeling, I think there are most of these panels are done with textures, just displacement or bump, and I feel like it would really benefit from actually having more of this model, or is it actually modeled? Or it might be modeled.
Which part? This stuff.
Just generally the panels, all the panels.
Oh no, this is texture.
Yeah.
I
Sorry, I'm trying to catch up here with my preview here because I can't see it on your stream.
oh okay.
Um,
I don't know, like I'm not saying your modeling is like bad. Your topology flow is nice. It's good. It's clean.
yeah, yeah.
For me personally, I would just when I don't want the pre-smooth mesh to change too much when I subdivide it. That's just my personal experience. So like this is clean, but it can be smoothed. If that makes sense. Like I personally don't like seeing the silhouette of a vehicle of something change too much when I subdivide it. Because like having just like an extra edge loop along here isn't really going to change too much as far as like being too heavy or something. It's like when you have the tire isn't changing too much, which is good. Yeah, sorry, did you have something to say, David?
I like that the tire actually has a little bit of a dent at the bottom. I mean, if
Oh,
this
this
is
bit?
supposed to move this vehicle and it's going to be rigged and it's actually kind of a living part in this project, then that would be a problem, obviously, because you would want it to model it evenly so you can actually animate it. But it's a nice attention to detail if it's just sitting there on the ground.
I don't know why you stick guns on the side. I think that's a bit strange.
Yeah, I wonder, but I guess that's a creative decision.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. I mean, yeah, if you're also going for modeling, I know this is a school project, but I wouldn't bother putting the car into a scene.
Yeah, especially integration needs to be
Perfect.
perfect. It's not, and it's an entirely different skill, and that takes a long time to acquire. And chances are you won't master it. Just because if you're
There's no
focusing
point
on
in
modeling
mastering
as
it.
well, yeah, you have to dedicate all your time to it. It's a completely different skill set.
Well,
So I would not bother with this sort
one
of
of
stuff.
one of the first things I noticed is these guns are floating, and I noticed it immediately.
Yeah,
That
what I
bothers me.
noticed immediately was that the that eagle on the back, is that, I don't know. It's
Eagle.
just,
What eagle?
yeah,
Oh, this thing?
and it's actually, yeah. I don't know that. First, I thought it's a German eagle, but maybe that's just because well, I
Fair
just
enough.
thought United States Army, and then, but maybe that's probably an American. I'm just making this up. But mainly in terms of the texture, it looks quite plain and clean, which to some degree it's very easy to overdo it, to do too much on these planes and vehicles. So that's generally the right idea. But I'm definitely missing a lot of detail in the spec. I think there should be a lot more um, purposeful specular detail in there, from weathering from the rain or from just dirt that accumulates in certain areas where it's a little bit more worn, more touched, more maintenance happened there. You could have this turbine on the left side where there's this. There must be some sort of exhaust coming out of there, and I would expect that the area behind it and the turbine itself has quite a bit of residue from whatever exhaust comes out of there. It just would be a little bit more worn in that area. It's just some dust or whatever pass on the whole thing. Generally, you could. It might not be. It shouldn't be completely obvious, but you could just have the top of the whole thing, just generally with an axis map, a little bit brighter because it's a little bit more exposed to the sun. Um, yeah, just generally a little bit more
Break up.
wear on the whole thing, coming from certain, with a certain purpose.
Yeah, I feel as well also like as far as the modeling goes, the problem with stuff like this is we can see inside of it, but you have nothing here. I think that's a big problem for showing a
Yeah,
turntable of an asset like this. If we can see inside of this, you should model something inside there. Like it doesn't even have to be perfect. There has to be good enough to see that there is something here though. Because I think, like, especially with like having a massive glass open at the front, it's just I find it kind of weird seeing seeing the
Yeah,
HDRI inside of it as well. By the way,
it makes it very quickly look like just a model, like as in a miniature, because it's just missing. Like if you don't have anything in there, it looks like it's just a prop, like fake.
yeah, totally. I would put something in here, even if it's just very simple. You just want some, like every time we build, say if we built something like this for a film, we wouldn't necessarily have to build a super detailed cockpit, but we'd always have to put something there. So in case the camera glances into the cockpit, objects, catch light on it, for example.
Yeah.
Where's the Humvee? I want to see it. But yeah, as far as your general modeling goes, so this is kind of what I mean, right? So your modeling is very low poly here. It's clean, but I think it's too low res. I naturally would prefer something more along this degree. This is just my personal opinion. I prefer having a bit more resolution, so when this is subdivided, the edge flow doesn't change too much.
Yeah.
So this is just, you can see how bare this is compared to this. But the thing is, it's not even like this is bad topology. It's good topology, but you can see how much everything is going to change. Everything's going to change a lot when you smooth it. You want to make an issue, but for the short, the uni project, I was told to leave it out. Really? I guess. But I feel like if you're going to put it in your portfolio with a turntable, you should add it. Definitely, 100% you should. If we can see inside of it, we can see it. Because that's what confuses me, because you've got model detail here. But I guess you do see it from the back a bit. There you go, you do see it from the back. But yeah, even if you weren't going to see it from the front, I would still model proxies shapes. Just so you can see basic stuff. Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. Nothing really. I have nothing in common on this, but do you want to talk, David?
Yeah, I feel like you did a damage pass, which is generally good, which is not everybody does that. Seems like I'm assuming you went into some sculpting program for that. But it looks a little bit too unmotivated. There's no real reason for this damage. No, like especially if you go, yeah, if you keep, yeah, here, like just in the middle, there's a seam, like
Oh.
different plates. Actually, I mean on his cheek, basically.
Oh, on the cheek.
Yeah, it's just the way the damage looks. It's just it looks like it's a little bit
Oh,
like
this
somebody. Yeah, and then on the above that, especially that line
this
above.
bit.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just looks a little bit. I can't really tell what happened to this thing. It's not a real chip, or it just looks like this is such a soft material that you can actually dent it with your finger.
Yeah, it looks like ZBrush for the sake of ZBrush.
Yeah,
Like it's
exactly.
not
Yeah, that's a good
motivated.
way of putting it. Yeah. So it's and that's really difficult to not get carried away with. Just like I can see that brush that you used up there on the top on the forehead, basically. This just long streak. It's very easy to get carried away by just using the simple tools instead of actually really creating a certain shape or a certain detail with a very particular purpose behind it. But if you do pull it off, it looks that much more impressive and realistic. And then if it's so damaged, if there's so much damage going on every single edge, I would expect it at least to be a little bit more dirty, the whole thing. That might be just the spec map, that there's just a little bit of dust, or not dust, but like just kind of this fingerprint kind of smudges or whatever. I'm saying fingerprint, I don't mean actually like having the fingerprints in there, but just just signs that this has been touched by people. It's just, yeah, it just seems odd to me that there would be this kind of damage and then it's super polished.
Yeah. It looks weird it would be damaged here so much as well, and this bit is not as damaged.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's
this is
not
a
driven.
strange spot for damage, and then above you don't have anything, so it's really just the edge. Yeah, a little bit more purpose to the detail, but it's cool that you thought about adding this sort of damage.
As far as like modeling goes, topology is all good. Nothing like this, like dealing with edges properly is all nice. So you have like you have enough edges that it doesn't pinch, which is good. Because the modeling is nice. Your modeling is definitely your strength. I can see.
And yeah, just again to quickly just something
Oh.
about that detail. Just generally speaking, just look at surfaces that are damaged. Just don't do it from memory. That always is basically setting yourself up for failure. And nobody does it in the industry like this. You just benefit so much from using references. And if you're using a reference image and you feel like you have actually matched it and it looks like this, then show it to somebody who isn't familiar with the project, who isn't attached to it, somebody you trust, and ask them if you actually matched it and if this comparing these two elements, if you followed the reference. Because I'm assuming, based on the damage that you added here, that it wasn't either matched to reference or it's just not closely enough. So definitely room for improvement.
I find, okay, this is something I want to comment on. So I noticed I was with this back piece, you can kind of tell it's just a object penetrating another one. So what I think would be better is see how, for example, you have like a shadow. You can show this as a separate piece, kind of sitting on top. But as it comes up, you see it kind of merges inside the object. So I think what would be better is if you have this sort of highlight across the entire thing. You can tell it's another piece on top, where at the top it looks like you've just penetrated it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. You can either do, you can literally see it's been penetrated. Like this bit here is, yeah, I would definitely keep stuff like that in mind.
Yeah, I've noticed that on the helicopter as well. There was this the turbine, the way it's mounted to the helicopter. There's a little bit of a gap between the piece and the.
I think like this sort of gap to show it's mounted on top is decent. I think this is the right way to do it. Totally.
Yeah.
But I think you need to match that consistently across it.
Yeah.
Because you can tell from the highlight that it just penetrates here.
Yeah.
And just things aren't built that way. But to fix that, all you have to do is grab the verts and pull it out. So pretty simple stuff. Yeah. Gatling gun. Or minigun, I mean. Yeah, it is what it is. It's not the strongest thing for a portfolio piece. It is realistically just a lot of cylinders. Oh, you got all this modeling stuff in here. Alright, I like the fact that you I like the fact that you fixed the points. Because I think that's something that kind of looks really like not aesthetically pleasing, is when you have cylinders go to a point and you have a really dark point in the middle. So I like that you went to the effort of not having that. But yeah, I feel, for example, something like a minigun, I think it's too basic for a portfolio piece. Because the reality is it's just a lot of cylinders. But yeah, but you're there we go.
I just wanted to add to that in terms of textures. I mean, there's no textures on this thing at all. I'm guessing that was obvious. I mean, intentional that you didn't texture this. And again, if you don't texture it, just make it a clear render.
Yeah.
Because otherwise something looks to be missing. One thing that I noticed with all those turntables, you have the sun behind the object at the beginning and throughout the whole turntable. So there's only a brief moment where you actually see the whole thing lit from the side, a little bit from the left side. Otherwise, it's always completely in the shadow, and that is difficult to see any details. It's almost like just looking at a silhouette. So I would just position the sun in a different position at the very start.
Cool. It's funny because I think this car is probably one of your... Yo, General, thanks for the $10, man. I appreciate it. Sick, dude. Yeah, David's been on a while, so yeah, thank you for sticking around, David, for so long.
Yeah, no worries.
People are still throwing money at you to keep you, so you can chill for a bit.
Right.
Are you in any rush to go or anything?
No, I'm alright.
I guess we're stuck inside, so you have no excuse. You can't really go around. But yeah, I feel the same. This is the same as your car. It's really nice topology. Everything's clean, efficient, nice. I personally would just have it. I would just personally have a slightly more edge loops, more similar to something like this. But to be fair, the complexity of the model itself is quite hard. I just personally don't like having such a basic shape around curves. That's just me. Tires really nice. You modeled the tread, that's cool. It's a shame we never see the tread though. So I feel you could probably show off the car a bit more. It would be nice having some like still frames, but maybe you have that on your art station or something, but like still frames of close-ups of maybe the tire could be kind of cool. But yeah, there is some weird pinching in sections.
Yeah, it's not completely clean everywhere. There are definitely areas where it's quite, yeah, not a straight line.
I think the topology flow itself is nice, but just some areas are not
Yeah, I
executed
think
right.
you have the basics really well done, and this is really difficult to do, and a lot of people I think struggle with. It's just getting the proportions right and having it actually recognizable as a car or a specific car as well.
Would you Oh, sorry. Would you put the camera this high, David, or do you reckon it'd be better to lower it? Or do you
I
reckon
think
that it
it's
matters?
fine. I just because I mean obviously there's also some detail on the top, so I think it's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the problem is
But
we can see like the pinching.
yeah, there's definitely it's not perfectly clean, and especially with cars, I think cars are one of the most difficult hard surface shape you could possibly do because there's just so many curves to it, and you have to make them flow together perfectly. And it's so unforgiving because of the reflection. Like
Yeah.
remember on that creature where Andrew said that if you're doing something like this, it's just really really risky because you have all these shapes where pinching becomes really obvious, and this is like the pinching
Prime.
like yeah, this is like paradise for pinching.
Paradise for
So
pinching, we'll have to remember that. But yeah, you can
um,
see there's something weird going on here. What is that? I don't know how that's being achieved though. Can you see this sort of dent, David?
uh,
Can you
oh
see
yeah,
when I
there's a
press on it?
there's a 5-star. Oh no, it's
Yeah,
not there.
I don't know where that
What?
dent is coming from. That's what's kind of confusing me. Because the
Yeah.
topology,
Oh, that might be just a reflection.
it might be a reflection. It looks like a dent. Maybe a different HDRI might be helpful.
Yeah.
Why is that? That's
I
so
think
weird.
that's just a highlight in the reflection
Okay.
because it does move when the thing moves, when the
Oh, it
car moves,
does?
like it curves around.
Oh yeah, it does. It just looks like a dent. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because yeah, as soon as I see this, I see a dent in the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel your general topology flow is decent. You just got to be careful for this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think like this is at a level
Yeah.
where you could definitely keep working on it and improving it, and you'll eventually get there.
Totally.
There are some, yeah, I've seen some where I feel like it's not worth it, but this is definitely.
I think that's
Um,
also where having more edge loops in general will help keep things smooth and consistent. Even if you do have cuts and bits where things change, if you have more topology, that pinch won't extend as far.
yeah.
Yeah, pretty decent stuff as far as modeling go, man. Yeah, I think more resolution would definitely help.
And yeah, I mean, in terms of texturing, I mean, this is kind of unfortunate because you have such an extreme reflection on the whole car. So you see the HDR image in this whole thing really, really clearly, and it's quite low res, or at least low res enough to notice it. So that's a bit unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, if everything was fine, that wouldn't be the biggest issue here. Yeah, just make sure that you have really nice materials and realistic materials if you're showing off a car. I mean, everybody knows what a car material looks like, a car shader looks like, and we see cars like this all the time in advertisements. So it doesn't look like a perfect car material to me. And also the glass, there's something off with the refraction, I think. So yeah, again, like I said, just if you're focusing on modeling and you want to show off the car. Just download some materials, just a glass material, a rubber material, and a car paint material, and you're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, so in general, your modeling is pretty decent. Definitely just need to be careful about pinching though. But your general topology flow is decent. It's fine. Yeah, I would just personally, I feel you should have more edge loops in your meshes, which would help deal with pinching in general. But yeah, pretty cool stuff, man. So who do we have left? Oh, Dr. No is here now. We can do his thing. So we have 2 demo reels left. Dr.
Cool.
No. Are you in the chat, Dr. No? Oh, you are here. Cool. So, can you write up what you're after? Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to go into? Like, what industry? What do you want from us, pretty much? Oh, I forgot to update this thing. Oh, shit. But, and up next is going to be Blue Spectre. So Blue Spectre will be our last one, and then we can do a brief Q&A where Channibal has already gathered heaps of questions.
Alright, cool.
Cool. We'll let Dr. No just. I'm mainly interested in environments and some texturing for movies and TV mainly, but also interested in video games. Okay,
That's pretty much everything.
Yeah. Okay, before we even start looking at demo reel, I would definitely pick one. Pick TV or games, because they're 2 completely different things. And you have completely different portfolios based on each. Because I looked at your stuff and I thought you were more interested in games. Cool. You like everything. Alright. What do you want to look at first, David?
I just start with the first one.
Well, this isn't Unreal. It's already game stuff.
Oh, sorry. What did you want to look at something different?
I don't know. Should we? Depends. Do you want to get more into film? Because film is where our experience is.
I mean, there isn't. I'm looking at this. I see those marble materials, but everything else to me looks like it's
Games, yeah.
sort of game.
Is this game? Mossy Rock.
Oh, actually, this is a good example. I wanted to say something about this one is here. So, if you look at the third image, oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth image, yeah. When you look at all the different materials that you have on here, it doesn't look to me like any of these are in a different layer in terms of their height. They all pretty much look like they're just on the same kind of noisy, basically elevation. I would definitely have the mossy bits a little bit more raised, and well, whatever other elements you have, just raise them a little bit, and it might just maybe it just doesn't look like it, and you did it anyway, and it just doesn't come across. But I would focus on making sure that that's there. But the other thing that really stood out to me is, which is a lot of people struggle with that, and it's really hard to pull it off, is that when you look at that mossy patch at the bottom, that one yellow one, just as one example, there is the transition from moss to no moss seems to be just achieved with opacity in this example. So it's just fading into nothingness, and you wouldn't have that with a real object. Like the moss just doesn't, the opacity of the moss just doesn't fade into nothingness in real life. And that's really difficult to pull off procedurally, because you would have to just have less of the 100% opacity elements distributed towards the edge. So that's really difficult to pull off. But when it's not there, it's really missing, and it just looks fake. So that's definitely something to look out for. And then the general breakup of the
we're still looking at the same image?
Yeah.
Okay, still good.
The general breakup of the smaller of the displacement here just looks a little bit soft. Like, I know that with these materials, they're not meant to be viewed from super close up, but it's hard to recognize any shape here. Really, it just looks just blobby. Yeah, it's difficult to just see the real thing here.
Yeah, it looks like the moss just kind of fades off.
Yeah.
So yeah, as far as working environments in film goes, environments also involves usually things like matte painting as well. So I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like we sometimes work in environments as well, but we just create modular components for environments. But environment artists themselves usually have to deal with like things like composite, or not compositing. They have to deal with things like, lighting, matte painting, especially the environment team at ILM. They do everything. They're called generalists because they just do everything, I feel. I don't know, do you feel like just having do you feel like having shader spheres is really enough, David? Or do you think things should be in their context?
For film work, I think that's
this is a very game thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you really nail it, it's gonna be impressive for sure. But I don't think it's enough. I mean, it's definitely not enough for to get a job in texturing. You need to apply it to. I mean, if texturing is your goal, but you need to apply it on a certain shape and just show that you know how it behaves once it's in a certain context.
It's kind of funny you mentioned you're more interested in film environments because it looks like you're more interested in games. So,
yeah.
Wait, what's the demo?
But I like those little spheres, the marble ones. They look cool.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to film, the main difference between film and games is films is very photoreal, where games can be quite stylized. So we just simply wouldn't.
Yeah, it's very hard to critique stylized stuff because there are so many reasons why you did one thing a certain way, and it's just hard to judge it against something realistic because obviously it's not meant to be realistic.
But I kind of feel like, I mean, I don't work in games, so this is just my observation, but I've noticed a lot of game environment artists seem to be posting a lot of material spheres. I don't know why, like procedural shaders. Why I don't see any VFX environment artists doing that. They focus more on just a full complete scene with heaps of polygons. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense to me that you would have more procedural stuff for games.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, yeah, I don't know if even if you do this as a game portfolio, I'm not sure if that would be enough to get you in, because in the end, you will probably, or there's chances are you're not actually the guy who creates those shaders, the procedural shaders, but more like if you're focusing on asset development, obviously you would have to apply that on a particular piece.
Yeah, I feel you need more applications of your skill. I think that's the general way of looking at it. It would be kind of like if I just had like, I don't know, just like a bunch of basic props that could be used by a film instead of having like a nice film asset. I guess that's the kind of way I kind of look at this.
Yeah.
Like there's no real application of the material, I guess.
Yeah, and in the end you will probably be hired for the application because you only need one guy who makes that material for everybody to use if it's one of those things that are going to be applied for everything.
Yeah, Pascal, thanks for the host, man. Yeah, once again, we are film artists, so we can't speak too much on games. But if you're more interested in working in film VFX, I think you need a whole new portfolio. To be honest, I don't know. I kind of feel you need to apply yourself. I think you definitely need to pick one. Pick games or film. You can't do both because they have two completely different portfolios.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and if you do pick up, like I do like those little spheres, the marble ones up there, in terms of,
that's your
yes, yeah, these guys. I think that's cool that it looks like marble. But in the end, that's all it really is. It's just a sphere. So if you apply that on like, even if you just pick a corner, just a little corner of a room, and you model, or you even if you're focusing on texturing or looked at for lighting or whatever, because you clearly pulled that off well here. If you download a room or whatever, and you just focus on that corner and make it look really cool from close up, that's a cool skill to show off, and you don't need to really have a strong modeling piece in order to show off what you can do with the textures and the lighting and the look of, or the other way around, if you create a nice model piece and then just apply some little materials here and there.
I kind of feel like if you applied to a VFX studio with this, they probably wouldn't consider it, because
I don't think so.
Because you're not providing what we do. That's the main thing, I feel. So you definitely need to redirect. Like, photorealism is the key to VFX. That's what we go for. Like, there is no stylized stuff. So everything we do is based on photorealism. So like David said, like focusing on building like a small section of a room photoreal would definitely help you, I feel. Like much more than the material. But like that's the thing, like all the work looks cool. It's just not focused on what we do. Like if
I mean, and especially like, let's say this looks like you have done all these procedural elements that might not necessarily need any specific application. Even if you just, like I said, you take that room and you show off that you can texture a room or like do shading for a room entirely with procedural materials, and it doesn't look procedural. That's definitely a cool skill to have, because there are instances where we have huge environments that we need to texture, and you just have to do it procedural. There's no way around it. So that's definitely a cool skill to have and to show off. But it's that alone still probably won't be enough. I mean, if you can do it so convincingly that you can't tell that this hasn't been properly textured, but still, I would wonder. I would like to see some actually like purposeful application of creating a scratch mask, and real damage to certain areas that really need it.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Like, you have good work, it's just not focused on what you want. So like when I saw your thing, I originally thought you wanted to go to games. I had no idea you were interested in film. And if a recruiter picks this up, or a supervisor, they wouldn't, like, it kind of looks like you sent it to the wrong studio, for example. Yeah, so I think, yeah, your work is cool. It's just time to focus on and showing what you want. So I think you should definitely think hard about where you want to go and then focus. I mean, if you want to swap into games like 10 years down the future, that's totally cool as well. But definitely focus your portfolio on one thing, or it just kind of confuses people.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the work itself goes, I think it looks cool, but it's just not focused.
I really like those animated rendered spheres at the bottom. I think if you have it's just one page in your, or like one I don't know, 5 seconds section in your demo reel video, and you just I meant specifically the marble ones, the realistic ones. At the bottom of the page it's animated. Yeah, it's like, if you go up a little bit, they're actually moving. And if you can show that you actually pulled off the material and it really looks like marble, that's pretty cool. If you have a section of just a bunch of materials that you really nailed and they're recognizable as this particular material, that's definitely a good skill and shows attention to detail. But yeah, I agree with what Andrew said before.
Yeah, I think you just need to take your skills you've got, because you've definitely got skills. Like no one can just casually pull this out, and then just apply it. Well, actually, it's kind of cool. And then make sure you tailor more towards film if you want to go to film. I think it's definitely best to pick. Yeah, I mean the work itself is cool. But do you have any more questions about your folio?
And just to add to this again, if you do texturing, you have to basically, unfortunately, for depends on how you look at it, you have to be good at look depth as well to some degree. And with these realistic marble materials, you kind of show that you actually know how to treat a material in the shading side as well. And that's something that a lot of people get wrong. It's so easy to screw up the look depth, because look depth just is a completely different skill set. And a lot of people, if they start texturing, like you people often start modeling, then they add their textures to it, and then they think like, well, obviously I'm doing texturing, I need to do the look depth as well, and it's the lowest priority. But it's just, if it's wrong and it's off, it just really pulls the whole thing down again. And with that, you really show that you have an understanding of materials. So it's good to show that. So
Pretty cool.
you have a certain skill that it definitely that works in your favor.
Thanks, Left Device. That probably sums up. Do you have any examples of technical techniques should train in your next project? I mean, I think you kind of have the skills. I think it's more about just applying it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would
Yeah,
say.
I think you have the skill already. You just need to pick portfolio pieces that are more tailored towards photorealism and film. So just taking your cool stuff and using it pretty much.
And like looking to just this image that you have open in here, right on the screen. I think the floor tiles look pretty cool. If you look at that other block, this dark block, marble block, yeah. Again, it's the same thing as what I mentioned before with the HDR being really low res. And this is a pretty prominent piece area in the whole asset. There's not much going on in this whole picture, but this takes quite a bit amount of space in here. So it's very obvious that to me this really stands out, that there is just such a low res picture being reflected in there. So I would, if that's the angle you choose, I would definitely make sure that you don't get stuff like this. Like you could put just a image on the opposite side to get this to reflect for this certain angle. You can still use that HDR, but just to get a better reflection in there, you could just put a different image on the plane and just make sure that this gets reflected in there, which is a lot more high res. Yeah, just a little detail.
Pretty cool. Awesome. So we have our last demo reel now. Blue Spectre. Where are we? Blue Spectre. Cool. Alright. So Spectre current is up next. No one is up next. I can go. Cool. Alright. So already, firstly, I can see we need much more complex subject matter. Where's the topology? Okay. Alright, so I've got to ask you a thing. Your original career goal was to get into game design, but I've shifted more towards film in the last couple of years. But honestly, I would still love to do either. I feel like my greatest weakness is primarily in presentation and texturing, but I'll take my critique you have to offer. Be brutally honest. Okay, firstly, I can't see your wireframe, so I can't judge your modeling at all with this. As far as like the modeling itself goes, it goes fine. Looks pretty cool. I think the subjects in general are just too simple. Like, I think like when it comes to doing demo reels, you want to stand out, and people will be like, oh, I remember the guy who did Rocket, but no one will remember the coffee machine, if that makes sense. I think you definitely need to have much more ambitious projects, but looking at this, it looks like you can model. But then at the end of the day, I can't see your topology, so I can't really judge your modeling. Do you have any thoughts on this, David?
Yeah, I agree with this. I mean, again, if you're showing something off that is super pristine like this, I would definitely make sure that the material is spot on. it looks fake to me. Again, this is unfortunately the trouble with trying to render something nicely and go beyond modeling. If you want to do that, you suddenly have to nail a bunch of things together. Like you have to do good lighting, you have to do good materials, good shading, and possibly good texturing as well. So it might be a kind of worms that you don't want to really open if you're focusing on modeling. But yeah, the material looks a little bit too fake to me. And you could have a little bit of a spec breakup. I know that's not usually what you have in those studio renders, but just to elevate it a little bit to set it apart from other people's work. But I agree with Andrew. It's a little bit too simple. Yeah, it looks a bit pinchy here.
Yeah, something's going wrong here. But yeah, we need to see your wireframe to judge the modeling.
Like I think
oh, sorry, was it?
This sort of stuff, this industrial kind of modeling is not a bad thing to have, but then maybe just have one little piece like this, and then everything else needs to be a little bit more interesting. But yeah, just looking at all the other pieces, there seem to be more of this stuff, so I wouldn't necessarily show all of that.
Yeah, I've noticed your demo reel seems really dark for some reason. Like everything is a black object.
Yeah, I see that too on my screen.
What is this? Yeah, I think things like this is just too simple, I feel. Like these are fine as modeling. Sorry, these are fine as modeling exercises, but not portfolios.
Yeah, and if you plan on doing something that simple, then you really have to elevate it to the next level by adding, like little chips and definitely a displacement pass on top, and like fingerprint stuff like that, smudges. If you really want to go to that microscopic level, it really needs to reflect that level of realism.
Would things ever be this dark? It's like super black.
No, yeah, that seems
it seems too intense, like too intense of a black, I feel.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's another thing which is really important in the pursuit of realism. It's important to have realism, and I've realism for me is the most interesting thing to work on and to try to achieve. But at the same time, it mustn't go at the expense of having a nice image to look at. Like if you have, it's really cool if you know that if you have a really like a light source that's really blown out, and if the camera looks into it, it would completely blow out the whole frame, which is realistic. But at the same time, if you don't see anything as a result of that, it's not going to work. It's just, and so that it's a fine balance to find, because it is good to show off that you understand that in a certain light environment it would be really dark, which I don't think would necessarily be the case here actually. But so it's good to show off this understanding, but it does need to be with a certain balance, and that's really hard to find this balance.
So I definitely wouldn't do this. I wouldn't put something of such a different scale in an environment like this. Like it feels weird having a massive lens to me. Yeah. Like there's no reason to integrate it, I feel. Unless it was going to be on the floor.
It's actually pretty decently done in terms of the lighting. I mean, it does look fairly integrated, which I guess makes it even more odd.
Yeah. It's so well integrated, but it's not. But the scale is weird.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, especially if you're treating it as a real object like this, where you're putting it into a real and dirty and
it needs to be the
wet
right
environment.
Scale.
It needs to, it really needs to reflect it in the materials as well.
Yeah, I think that one of the main things is I can never see your wireframes, so I have no idea what your modeling is like. Like I can see a nice model render, but if I don't know what the topology like is, I don't know. This could be made in CAD software, and I wouldn't know. What was it made in? Max. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, like I feel you need to show your wireframe to properly be judged on this sort of stuff. Because it looks like you can model, but I don't know what the quality of your modeling is like.
Yeah, like this sort of stuff. I mean, for advertising,
It works.
it works. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what they want, and it is mostly probably shapes like that. But and yeah, it shows that you do have that eye for the
The
certain
small
details.
details, yeah, exactly. That's why I feel like it shows you have the eye for the small detail, but I can't see how you modeled this, which I feel is something I'd like to see. Two spaceships have wireframes, but still sort of moves away from that afterwards. Okay. Spaceships? One. Is this your spaceship? Okay. Firstly, I can't see anything, so
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem so far. Actually, kind of cool ship. I think these vents are massive. These intakes are huge. I don't think they would do that. I think the turntable's a bit slow.
It's a bit slow, yeah.
Yeah, I'm already starting to skip.
A lot of shadow.
Okay, so you're doing poly modeling, right? So did you want to work in film? Because if you want to work in film, you would have to do this sub D. So you would have to do proper sub D modeling instead of just poly. Like, to be honest, I do kind of like the general shape of the ship. I think it's got potential, I think, as far as just like a general spaceship goes. But yeah, this is way too dark. Can't see anything. I feel the cockpit's not very good, I feel. I can't imagine you just have such an open, empty space like that. But yeah, your stuff is super dark, man.
Yeah, that's for me the biggest issue. I first thought they're textures basically because it
Oh, you
looks so
modeled
dark
before.
like in certain areas,
Okay.
but I don't think there are any textures. It's just, or you have at least got some different
Yeah, you
materials
modeled before
on
moving
there,
to
but
film? Okay, that's fair enough. Sorry.
yeah, I wouldn't put different materials like that on there just because it gives the illusion that you tried to texture it and kind of failed at it. Like it doesn't actually, it doesn't have that level of detail in the texture. So I would stick with a clay render.
That's the funny thing, right? Because when we look at this compared to this, it looks like two completely different people. Like the presentation
Yeah.
levels of this compared to this is so off.
Yeah.
That I would potentially just remove it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the thing is, like, you can keep this stuff on your art station if you want, but I wouldn't apply with your art station. I would apply with, like, this is something in general I think is important. I think for film you should send a demo reel in, and your demo reel is tailored to everything specifically you want to show. Where on an art station you can post stuff for fun. But the thing is, if I came here, I would look at like the first thing you modeled and I would judge you on this instead of because this is way too simple for us to consider for film.
Yeah, in fact, I would look for the worst thing I could find in the
Yeah,
thumbnail.
exactly. That's what we would probably do. We would look for the worst thing and then judge you on it.
Yeah.
I can see the I wouldn't bother with this either. Are those watermarks? Yeah, I wouldn't put watermarks on your stuff.
Yeah, especially if it's not like a super original concept. I mean, I guess I don't know if you're planning on selling the furniture, then yeah, but
Yeah, I think the main thing is we definitely would like to see your new sub-D topology. And you definitely need to pick more ambitious. I think you went from quite ambitious to this. So I think I think you just need to copy. I can totally see you can model a car pretty decently, I would think. I mean, I don't know what your topology is like, but based on looking at how you treat the forms, I can see you know how to model like all this sort of stuff.
yeah, those are nice clean curves.
I think it would, definitely for you, I would definitely pick a much more complex asset. Preferably something that's not black, because everything on your portfolio looks black at the moment. Speed tree. I don't know anything about speed tree, David. Do you know anything about speed tree?
No, nothing. I've used it once, like 10 years ago.
We won't look at speed tree then, because I have no idea. Yeah, I feel like you could probably I would if you were gonna model this as well. I would also have like some very subtle breakup in the modeling, like not just the texture, but like I would just grab some verts and like nudge them around, so everything is not perfectly straight.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. That's the main thing that stands out for me, especially because the
It's very
texture
perfect.
is quite beat up.
Yeah.
I would definitely expect the model to reflect that. Yeah, the texture itself, it looks a little bit low res to me.
Yeah.
And it just looks like it doesn't have the specular quality that I would expect on the wood, and you have some dirt on there, and it's kind of this exact same specular detail as the wood itself. And the dirt just is a little bit of like a bumpy surface. There isn't really any specific shape to the dirt. The rust, it looks a bit. The whole thing just looks quite low res, considering that I mean it's just a box. There's nothing like on a huge environment. I understand if you have to just make do with some lower res images from the distance and it's gonna work. But if it's such a close up SRD, I would definitely expect that there should be some resources that would have the proper resolution that you could use. And
Right.
yeah, I add like displacement, just chips and whatnot everywhere. Because yeah, this sort of surface, I think it's a great start for a model. But the texture detail really implies that it would be a lot more beat up. And I don't know, somehow it kind of throws me off that you have these number combination locks that are super rusty and old on this old wooden box. Like I would expect a key lock, but that's just me.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true. I never would have thought of that, but I guess that is kind of true. Yeah, would you really have you wouldn't really have such old number locks, would you?
Yeah, for something so rusty and old like this old box, but maybe it's somebody discovered this box and then decided to put a lock on it.
But yeah, we just have to check out your spaceship now. So get the start, don't we? So I assume you just did the modeling, right? Work. Cool. I was not involved with the final animation process. Okay, so one of the main things I mentioned about this thing, I think it's very simple. Like if you look at real NASA, like what was it? Do you wanna talk about texture, David,
Yeah.
while I look up stuff?
Yeah. In terms of the texture, I think the what stands out for me more is actually the shaders. Just it looks really like a Lambert pretty much in everything except for the panels. The panels look cool. I like the way they reflect in the sun or whatever it is, the light. But the whole thing, I know these sort of these spacecrafts are quite matte. But it looks like everything is really just the same kind of matte material. And the this kind of burnt off surface, the scorch marks on the front, to me look like they're quite low res. I probably would have to look at reference for that before actually making that judgment, because it might actually look like that. But it does, in the end, it does look low res to me, just looking at it without references.
I think also like this thing doesn't really sell the scale of how big this is. Like you can't
Yeah,
really tell how big it is. If we look at like I don't know, things like modular stuff from like the International Space Station, you can just see how complex. You can see here, this is a prime example actually. You can see how much detail and complexity is in these modular components.
yeah, especially, I mean, looking at reference like that, the one thing that I thought the reason why it's so matte is because I think that actual piece on the whatever Saturn V or whatever it is, that little front, the passenger capsule, might be quite matte, but everything else is, those things are usually quite shiny. I don't know, but it looks just a little bit bland to me, and it probably would be just as easy as looking at reference.
Oh god, go back. Yeah, I feel like you definitely need to look at reference more for something like this. Like, because as far as even just the modeling goes, like, this stuff is very complex. This stuff is, like, just watch Gravity. They modeled all of that. It's crazy. Zoom. Yeah, so definitely look at reference when it comes to modeling a spaceship like that. Because this stuff is Very complex.
Yeah, in the end, it needs to look interesting. Like what I just said about the material, if it might just be, that might actually be what it looks like. But in the end, if it doesn't look interesting, then either make it more interesting or just don't use it as a portfolio piece, because if it looks boring, if it doesn't help you get the job, then there's no point in using this.
Yeah.
Also, I'm wondering why it has this little window here.
Wait, which
If
window?
there, like, there's this little, if you go, yeah,
Oh,
here is
this
it like a
side.
glass?
Yeah.
Yeah, if this front piece is entering the atmosphere, like burning up, I don't know if they would have a glass window that comes out like this. But maybe it's detachable. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, overthinking it now. But
Yeah.
in the end, yeah, the materials are not very convincing to me.
Yeah.
And that pulls it down.
I think. Yeah, I would also model this in. It looks like this is a texture.
Yeah. Or at least the texture that's applied is really low res.
Very channel, what's going on? But yeah, I feel like yeah, definitely look more realism. Definitely look more at reference. Oh yeah, also in film, like we don't use normal maps. Do we, David? We don't use normal maps, right? Just before
No.
I hunt, yeah.
No.
I don't want to say that, and turns out you do. I didn't realize, but yeah, like film.
No, it's very rare.
In film, we model everything we can. It's not true. Use normal maps.
I
I
mean,
mean, I guess if you want, but it's not a standard practice to
I
normal
I
maps.
have never. I don't remember ever painting a normal map in all the companies that I've been to.
I remember we tried a normal map on episode 8, and they changed their
Yeah,
mind.
I remember that.
And then they're like, "Nah, let's bevel everything."
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions involving your portfolio? I feel like you have an eye for like details, but you need a much more complex. I think this is the weird thing. Like this stuff here looks completely different to this stuff. Like there's so it looks like multiple different artists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely need to pick much more ambitious projects from the real world. I think like something that would be cool if you wanted to do something similar to that is to build a modular section of the International Space Station. I think NASA have heaps of high-res reference like that. You work
Yeah.
full-time in a
Exactly.
warehouse, so the only time you have for improving your portfolio is a couple hours after work every day. I want to focus your time specifically. Yeah, I would totally just. I think pick an ambitious project, something that exists from the real world, build it to a very high level, and match the reference. I think that's the most important thing you need to worry about. So, like, say for example, if you had access to a museum, and like I guess COVID is happening at the moment, but if you can go to the museum, you can find heaps of amazing aircraft vehicles, like tractors, stuff like that. Take heaps of reference of it and build it to a photorealistic level. I think that's what the main thing you do. Don't pick something black as well. Everything in your demo reel is black. That's
Yeah.
that's the main thing. But yo, okay, so that's all the portfolios, right? So David, do you have time for a quick Q&A?
Yeah. Let's
Yep.
do it.
So I need to quickly go to chug a piss again from
Yeah.
drinking
Me too.
water so much. But we'll be back in like 5 minutes. All right, so Yo, David, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're back? Alright, what's going on in the chat? What are you guys... If Chernobyl is telling you guys to settle down, something must be happening. What are you guys talking about? Do I have to discipline people, Chernobyl? What's going on? Holy shit, you have a pretty decent Q&A. Alright. We have some stuff. So, David, is this more for Q&A? It's fine? Okay, good. Is this Q&A for... I assume it's mostly for David, right? So, yeah, Chernobyl, thank you so much for doing this, man. Yeah, everyone... We have to thank Chernobyl for being such a good mod. Always supporting the stream, making my life 1,000 times easier. So thank you very much, Chernobyl. But Stuffy McStuff says, oh, of course I can't open this. Do you prefer assets where it's a clear execution of concept, or one which was more storytelling, like the Game Boy? Do you think that could be more interesting in a real context if you had more storytelling details and texture? Did I read that right?
I mean, if I understand it correctly, I mean, in the end, I always like when there is some sort of purpose to it, and I think that's just generally necessary to have. You always want to have kind of a history to it, and not necessarily in the sense that it needs to be reflected in the movie or the story of the movie needs to explain anything. But I mean, if you have a Game Boy in a scene, and it's unlikely that it's going to be perfectly pristine. You do need to invent some sort of history for it, whether that's coming from the project itself or you just need to make it up.
Yeah, totally.
But it really helps with selling the look if you actually give it some sort of context in your work.
Yeah, so like the same thing also happens with, say, for example, when we do destruction. We don't just randomly cut stuff up. We have to imagine how this thing would tear apart if something hit in a specific way. Like, that's how we sell realism, is we give a story of why it's like this. So I assume that's what that's kind of asking. Do you enjoy applying that story? I guess he's saying, do you enjoy making the story up yourself or just copying the reference? I guess. I guess it's a mix of both, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it depends on how detailed the reference is. It depends on how important the object is. If it's just like some small piece that needs to be done, there probably isn't any reference for it. Or sometimes you actually have to match photography from the set, and then you don't have any liberty to add anything because it needs to be exactly the same thing because you're seeing like a shot transition. But then there are things where you get like a really vague concept and you can make stuff up, which is cool. But that it always depends on what the production is and how picky the client is. Because sometimes you get something where you feel like, oh, I've got a lot of freedom because I've got a really, really vague concept, but the client might still be extremely picky and have a really, really detailed imagination of what this thing is going to look like. So you kind of you try to make something up, and then the client goes, no, that's not at all what I was imagining in my head.
I remember there was a funny story. My friend textured the Clipper from Jupiter Ascending, which is like a huge spaceship, right? But the client wants to see oil drips. So he's like, I had to paint several kilometer oil drips. Like, just because we kind of have to make up shit that don't really work sometimes, I guess, unfortunately.
Yeah, it really totally completely depends on the production and the client, how much freedom you have. And in the end, for me personally, it's always cool to make stuff up and to base it on certain things that I would like to do. But it depends on what the project is.
Yeah, I guess that's as far as film go, that's the general thing. It depends what the project is. It changes on every film. It changes on supervisors, changes, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even like supervisor level, there are some that are just very picky with how they interpret the client's expectations, and some are like, I trust your
judgment,
expertise or judgment, and they let you do.
Rago says, does ILM hire people who do both modeling and texturing? I mean, they do, but usually you'll still get picked to do one. So like we've worked with people that can both model and texture, but if they get hired as a texture artist, they are just texturing.
Yeah, it's sometimes happens that people end up just by chance, more or less, that they will also texture the thing that they're that they were modeling, but that's rare.
Yeah, I usually find that a lot of the time modeling, like texturing, will kind of start sometimes before modeling is even finished. Sometimes,
Yeah,
so you can't really there's not time to do both.
yeah.
If that makes sense. Um, official Susk says, how did you start? Like, did you visit any school in particular? And you listed something I can't read. Who? I'm like, can you read this, David?
Oh, 1 second. Cause can you send me the link to this thing again? Cause I can't see it
Oh,
on the screen.
no,
The resolution is too low.
this is something else. These are questions. I posted it in the chat. I have no idea how to say that.
Oh yes, höhere technische Lehranstalt. That's like a school. It means higher technical
Okay.
school.
Yeah, so did you visit any school or anything? Were you just interested and started
Oh
at some
yeah.
company?
I went to this school. I actually went to this HTL, höhere technische Lehranstalt, which I mean, this is just a type of school. It doesn't really have anything to do with 3D.
Okay.
We did happen to have one class where we briefly touched on Cinema 4D, and because I knew that a friend of mine actually brought a copy of Cinema 4D to school one day, and I thought it's really cool, and I think he was looking at it because he knew that we were going to have a class on it.
Okay.
And from that point on, I was just spending every minute, every free minute
Sick.
with Cinema 4D.
That's pretty cool, man.
But yeah, my school didn't. There wasn't no focus on that.
Yeah.
I just eventually started to think about going to a school specifically for that, and it ended up being Vancouver Film School.
Nice. Zay Jorilla says, should I go for texturing also when focusing on organic modeling in general? Is that a plus or not to get hired? And then how long did it take you to score your first gig? So I guess you can answer that one first. Like after school, how long did it take you to get picked up? It's pretty fast, right?
I got a job right away. So
That's sick, dude.
yeah. But sorry, what was the first question? If you benefit from doing texturing if you do organic modeling?
Yes.
Well, I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're really good and you can pull off both and it looks excellent, yes, of course. If you have just a clay render compared to a fully photorealistic render of your creature, it's gonna be really cool. But that means again you not only have to pull off the texturing really, really well, you also have to do the shading really, really well.
Yeah.
And you have to do the lighting well as well.
I guess a lot of people forget the shading side. They just assume it's model and texture, but don't forget.
And it's a big part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, if you do everything well, it's always the same answer basically. If you can do everything extremely well, then yes, make a movie with explosions and everything happening, and like make your own feature film. But the chances of that are just super low. So I wouldn't do it. I would, if I wanted to get a job as an organic creature modeler, I would focus on organic creature modeling.
Yeah. CG Rockstar says, I guess the biggest dilemma with a lot of guys would be making their CG their own as well compared to concept art. What do you guys think about this in professional world? At work, we need to follow it. So you're talking about like how closely to follow the concept. I think you should follow the concept as much as you can, especially if you're going to show it. How do you feel about that, David?
Talking about work or talking about like your own personal stuff?
Your own personal stuff. So he's saying at work we have to match the concept perfectly, but how much should we make that our own outside, like for students?
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said initially already while reviewing the portfolios, I just wouldn't do any concept based work anyway.
Yeah.
That's like we're not just saying that because I don't know, for whatever reason. It's really not a good idea to do that. If you're really experienced and you have already gotten a job in the industry and you've proven that you can do it, then I would consider doing that. But
yeah, it doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So
Richard says, just wanted to know because if I have a pinching like that in Maya, because I used a very aggressive Fong, but in my final presentation I use a less aggressive material and you can't see it, is that fine? I mean, the reality is, if I can't see it pinching on the render, I won't know it's pinching. So that also
Yeah.
that's important with your presentation, is if you hide your mistakes, how will people know they're there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in the end, if you're just hiding it and you don't actually know how to fix it,
That's also a
that might
problem.
be a problem for you in the end once you got the job.
Mm.
But I mean, at least you got the job, so I guess
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
something.
At that point, you can just fix it.
Yeah.
David, do you mind telling us what Bundesland you're from?
Oh, Bundesland,
Bundesland.
the
Okay.
state,
Yeah.
Vienna.
What's that?
Vienna.
Vienna. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Um, it would be cool if you guys could say what level a junior should have and how the portfolios compare to it, so we have a perspective as students. Hmm. I don't know. I kind
Yeah,
of feel
sure.
like the hard thing with that is like you could have the best portfolio ever, but someone just might not hire because there's no one hiring at that point. But
Yeah. I mean,
I've seen
there
some bad
once
folios
in
get picked up.
yeah, exactly. Like once in a while, you see somebody who's really good, and most of the time, it's that person will get hired. You can tell some work just looks really good, and yes, there just there's so many that are just not good enough, and you do need to stand out. There are only so many junior positions that are going to be open throughout the year at these companies, and there are not that many companies. I mean, there's like I don't know how many, 7 or so
Yeah.
of these really big film companies, and they only need so many juniors each year. So you do really need to stand out. So it I would really suggest if you're doing your reel, just show it to somebody who you trust to give you honest feedback and tell you if this is going to be good enough to. I mean, you can always take the chance. Obviously, I would just throw out your reel if you can. You think you have something to show, but it does need to be something pretty good to like standing out a little bit compared to all the other juniors.
I'll show you the guy that got picked up by a green light at DNEG, Andrew Dyer. I'll show you his stuff. So Andrew Dyer's stuff is a very strong level,
Oh yeah,
especially the
yeah,
breakdown stuff. So if we're
yeah.
talking about like this guy got picked up by the yeah, this guy got picked up by the Greenlight program, and then he ended up being successful. I'll post a link to his artwork. So if you can hit this level, you have a strong chance.
Like there's also a difference between junior and, and junior.
Yeah,
There, when
like
I
this is
started in the
strong.
yeah, that looks awesome. When I started in the industry, I basically already had 10 years of experience just doing 3D at home, which is not. I mean, that's completely a different type of experience from working in the industry. But it makes a big difference. So, but if you're looking at like, okay, this is a junior and this is a junior, and both, I still had a junior demo reel basically. But it makes obviously a big difference if you're comparing this to somebody who actually just did 1 year at school and is now competing for the exact same position.
Let's see who is next. Um, who's next? What's next? How can I apply for internship if I didn't study in university and I'm a self-taught artist? Um,
It doesn't really matter
yeah, I don't think
if
your
you have good
education matters.
work. I feel like going to school is not like specific 3D school. It's not necessary really. It's more like you get an advantage compared to other people because it does look good on a resume, and they might think, oh, this guy went to this school, so I can expect a certain level of quality. Um, but in terms of the skill, you can definitely be much better than anybody who went to any of those schools. It's just, I
I
mean, you have 1 year in those schools maximum, or depends on what it is, but you can only learn so much. If somebody learns 5 or 10 years of 3D at home versus somebody does 1 year at school, I'm pretty sure the person who did 5 or 10 years at home is going to be better than the guy who
Yeah.
did school.
I think also like a way of getting yourself exposed, like entering things like the rookies and stuff like that, like posting your stuff on ArtStation, entering design challenges, anything in general like that to build exposure can help you be seen as well.
Yeah.
Totally. Like if you have, I don't know, if you do well in the rookies and you put that in your application, that can help you. Do you work in Ace's workflow, David?
No.
No. Okay. That one's easy. Do you also receive an HDRI? Do you receive a HDR image of the set? I guess not,
yes,
right? Oh, you do?
that's not. Well, that's not really for texturing. What we do kind of receive that to some degree. I mean, so generally every production gets an HDRI from the set. That's like the bare minimum to be able to create a realistic integration. But that's for lighting and for look depth especially. For texturing, we do get that as well. In Mari, but it's not. We render the assets that we're texturing, since we're kind of doing look depth as well to some degree. At RLM, we do kind of we present our stuff in those environments, because obviously that's what is going to be in the film in the end. But yeah, so we do get it, but it's not really a texture thing. It's more like look depth or lighting.
Do you make an OCIO setup in Mari? I have no idea what that is.
We don't have to deal with that. Luckily, that's already
What is that?
done for us.
Without going too into it.
Oh, it's just about the colors, but
okay.
Luckily we that's usually there's so much going on in the pipeline that we luckily don't have to deal with. That is already preset, and there's such a good like automation for this already.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Do you export your textures in linear sRGB and then convert it or export in Ace's CG right?
That's well. So I'm not going to go too much into detail what we're doing at work because
it's a confidential. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Well, yeah, I honestly don't know how much they would be happy with me talking about it. So I'm just going to not talk about this.
You don't have to if it's going to get you in trouble. Or anything.
But generally speaking, I myself, I don't think this is necessary, like for personal projects. I don't think there is any reason to do that. It's overkill.
Alright, fair enough. I have no idea about this sort of stuff, so I don't know. How the look dev is done when you have to match the real life footage and have precise colors and to have precise colors. Oh.
Sorry, can you say that again?
How is the look dev done when you have to match real life footage and have precise color?
Well, it involves all of that. I mean, that's
okay,
like explaining the whole color pipeline.
Yeah, okay. That's way too much to talk about.
Yeah.
Alvis85 has a texturing question. Do they ever use normal plus bump or bump plus displacement on the same model? I had a tire model in mind with details on it, and he shows this image.
Yes, definitely. Basically, I mean, if you know the difference between bump and displacement, if you, especially with this angle here, if you want to just, as soon as you want to change the shape of the object, if you want to change the silhouette of it, you would want to use displacement. And we wherever I've been, we always use displacement, even more so than I think maybe people would expect. Displacement even for smaller details than maybe you would expect. And then for really fine stuff, especially for characters, there's often bump involved as well. But depends on the scale of the asset, obviously. If you have something really large, chances are you're not going to just do bump, because you're not going to see much of that if you really want the silhouette to change.
Okay. And last one is Marmalade Tim says, if real music will be muted, should I even have music? That's totally up to you. It doesn't matter.
I mean, I personally
you don't like it?
No, I just personally don't do it. Like, if you look at my professional anyway, the student reel still had music, but the professional one I didn't even put any music
I
there.
didn't even notice because I muted it when I played it. Like,
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I personally put music on mine because I like just to have a nice thing to post on the internet. But it's not. If they look at my reel in the studio, they just mute it. Like, it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
What I'm thinking about especially is that I remember when I started making reels for the first time, I wanted to have it like go exactly with the beats of the music, and have
A
cuts
lot
and
of
all of
extra
that. And I
time.
spent a lot of time matching it to that and making it cool. And in the end, nobody will ever look at this. So it's the time that you're spending on this, and it can easily turn into hours.
Yeah.
You might just do another nice render of your work and have that actually improve your chances of getting hired.
Yeah. Like, that totally makes sense. Like, the reason I do the music is I kind of want that nice little presentation piece for myself, but it's not going to get me a job and it's irrelevant, I feel. But
Yeah,
I do
exactly.
it for my personal marketing side, I guess.
Yeah, no, totally, and I think that's
Yeah.
totally valid. But in order to get the job,
Yeah. I didn't
you
even
have
know
a
you
lot
didn't
of-
have music on your reel because I muted it as soon as I opened it.
yeah, exactly. That could
Um,
show people.
so it's almost 4 o'clock. Should we just ask questions until
Yeah, if
4?
anybody has
So,
more questions.
yeah, if anyone has questions for the last 9 minutes for David. Channel, was there more of them? Or someone says, why do you use bump and not normal?
Honestly, that's not really a question that ever came up for me. It's just the workflow that people have decided the pipeline to like focus on. I can't really tell you why.
Yeah, so it's just the way it is, pretty much.
Yeah.
STFX asked, will there be another review session? I mean, I've had fun. Like, this has been pretty cool for me. This went way longer than I thought it would, but yeah, would you be interested in doing something like this in the future again, David?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just reading the question. Does
Oh,
David use Blender? And David doesn't use Blender.
no one uses Blender.
I've like I said, like Andrew, I started with Cinema 4D, which it's quite rare. Where like when I noticed, or Andrew told me for the first time that he used Cinema 4D, I was quite surprised because I've never met anybody else who has started out with Cinema 4D. But I think it's a cool program. I think it's a really simplified introduction to 3D. I found Maya very overwhelming when I first started working with it, and it took me a long time to switch over from Cinema 4D to Maya. I knew that the industry standard was Maya,
Yeah.
but I was very discouraged by the interface to ever start picking it up, and I really only started, I think, at VFS to
Yeah.
use Maya.
For
And in
Baz,
the end,
oh,
it's
sorry.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same shit. Fabazo says, what is the main program you use, and do you need to know Substance?
No, well, for texturing we're using
Yep.
Mari. Some companies, and I'm saying like the whole industry is using Mari. Some companies, I think, are using Substance as well now.
But
I personally like using Substance Designer for very particular things. I haven't really used Substance Paint. I think I've opened it once.
yeah. So, like, I think we talked about this briefly at the start of the stream. Like, you can get a job without knowing Substance, but you can't get a job without knowing Mari. For
Yeah, I
texture
would be very surprised if you get hired for texturing without knowing the main texture application. I mean,
Exactly. It's like Maya.
yeah, it's like I think if you're super good with whatever work you create and you have that name, like you have a really big name in the industry, it doesn't matter maybe
Oh shit, you
what
said
software
designer.
you're
Sorry.
using.
I just totally misread his question. He's talking about Substance Designer, so you do use it for a degree. But it's not
Uh,
important, right?
yes, it's not important, not at all. I mean, especially because designer is not really ideal to texture a full asset.
Okay.
So
Because I know Adam Elkins uses it sometimes, but he
yeah,
uses
I
it
mean, I
quite a
think you
lot.
can do really cool stuff with it, and it's not even just for games. There are some really cool techniques where you can create some really cool tileables. And I love that. I wish I had more time to play around with it and really figure out the whole potential of the whole thing, because I think it's really powerful, but it doesn't replace Mari.
Yeah. Does David use Mari curvature or bakes them from another renderer?
I actually, it depends. I don't even like to use it because it's so slow. I used to, depends on what topology you get. I do use the regular curvature layer, but sometimes, yeah, if there's no other way, I'll bake it with Modo.
Modo? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do when you have displacement on multiple tires for close-ups, but you can't see it because you're not rendering for close-ups? Are you just slowing down your renders? What?
Well, if you have displacement for close-ups but you're not using it, then you wouldn't be using it. I mean, there's like if you're not actually showing it in the close-up. I don't know if I understand the question correctly, but there wouldn't be any reason to have the displacement in there if there's no way you're going to see it.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Quixel Mixer? Do you know what that is?
Quixel? No,
I
I
don't
don't
even know what that is. Okay, that's a simple thing. What if you have to? Okay, no, that's another question I read. What else we got? I've been checking studios' websites for quite some time, and I haven't seen any job openings for hard surface modelers or creature modelers. Any thoughts on it? I mean, I guess it's more directed at me, but usually when it comes to like applying for that sort of stuff, they don't advertise specifically. Usually they just look for a modeler, and then you send your reel in and you specify what your strength is.
Yep.
If you're faster with a different software, does the studio care if you model in that different software and then set up the files in Maya? Provide license issue. It doesn't matter as much. Like there was, for example, at ILM, we all use Maya, but there's a guy that used Modo, but he could still export his stuff out and check into the pipeline, so there was no problems in that regard. But it depends on the studio, though. It depends how open they are to that.
Yeah, and I think especially if you're a student
Yeah, exactly. That's another
entering as a
thing.
junior, I wouldn't expect that. Like the guy had a good portfolio,
Yeah.
and he
Like,
really proved
15
that he
years of
knew what he was
experience.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly.
he was fast with this program that he was using. But if you're a student, I would be very surprised if they will take you on if you
Yeah.
have never opened Maya before.
If you're a student, don't try and get the studio to bend for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
you would have to be really good. Like this guy, the one that Andrew just pulled up. Maybe if this guy just used Max, they might hire him anyway.
nah, don't chance. I don't think so.
But yeah.
I think they'd be like, cool, but you're swapping to Maya. Like that's the thing that we'd consider hiring you, but you have to use Maya.
No, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, they would hire him despite maybe the fact that he only knows Max, but in the end, he would still, as a junior, he would still have to switch.
Yeah, totally. I mean, because the problem is if you're a junior and you have to learn a if you're a junior and you have to learn a new program on the job, firstly, that's hard enough. Secondly, you also have to learn the studio's pipeline. So you would be walking into a studio with no knowledge of anything. Like, you wouldn't know the pipeline, you wouldn't be used to working in pipeline, and you wouldn't know even the main software, like the Maya package. So you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah. And then a studio doesn't want to pay for you to learn stuff. Yeah, we got one more minute. I guess we'll do one more question.
Sure.
Do I see any more questions? I guess not. But yeah. How did you guys find all that? Thank you so much for coming in, David. That was super fun. That was pretty cool actually. I was concerned.
Yeah, I really too.
I didn't know how this would go, but at some point we got up to 200 people watching us, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. It was fun.
Yeah, we're still going, Sarah. Yeah, Channibal, thank you so much for being the mod as well. I greatly appreciate that. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. That was pretty cool. Would you guys be interested in seeing this again in the future? We can get David back at some point we can bring on some new people, and yeah, everyone seems pretty happy with the idea. We can get Sarah. We can get Sarah if she wants. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, David.
Cool. Yeah, no worries.
That was pretty fun. I'll cut the chat, and I'll see you later, man.
All right.
Take it easy, man.